So usually when we feed, this is going to be usually feeding for touch tank 1. We would grab the bag of food from the freezer, and the food is usually a mix of shrimp, scallops. Sometimes there's calamari in here, which are just squid rings, and then there's also the actual fish in here. And so the usual feeding procedure is you would put the food bucket, which says tank 1 only, on the scale. Make sure it's zeroed out so it's not actually measuring the weight of the bucket. And then you're gonna add enough food until it says 110 grams. And that's usually what we would feed touch tank 1. Depending on what tank you're feeding would depend on how many grams you're feeding. Come over and then grab the cutting board. And then usually we just set it up here. And then how I would normally feed is these are already set up. So then I would just rinse out the water. Make sure all the water is out. And another thing I forgot to mention is gloves, #1 safety in the lab. Some people you don't have to have gloves on to feed, but your hands are going to smell pretty fishy. So I just usually tend to have gloves, and then always careful with your knives. Kind of kitchen safety 101. And then you're just going to cut up the food nice and small for them. It also depends on what you're cutting. So something like a scallop, because they're already pretty small, I'll usually just slice them in half and then throw them back in. Something like a piece of fish, because it's a little larger, depending on the size of it, I would either chunk it into 3 pieces, or this one's a little larger, so I would do 4 chunks out of it. And you just want to make sure that the food is no bigger than a fish's gape hole, and their gape hole is just how wide they can physically open their mouth. Because if a piece of food is bigger than their mouth, they obviously are not going to be able to eat it, or if they try to eat it, they're going to choke, and that's definitely not healthy for the animal. And if the pieces are too small, they might have trouble trying to eat it because they're not able to see the food actually going into their mouth, so they're going to try and grab it.
So could you explain how you're feeding them and why you're doing it the way you're doing it?
So right now, what we're going to do is throw some food in, and this is called feeding to satiation, and it's also just feeding them where you're putting the food in and they're all kind of grabbing it at once. And these white things are here for the safety of us students, because these guys will splash and thrash and do everything humanly possible to get as much food as they can. It's not healthy or good that they're doing that, but that's just normal feeding behavior.